Week 8 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few running backs. I have his sleeper options this week. The first guy, David Johnson of the Houston Texans. So David Johnson here, it looks like he's going to have more of a role once again with this Texan team. That Mark Ingram got traded back to the New Orleans Saints the other day here. So last week we saw a lot of workload for David Johnson versus former team, the Arizona Cardinals, and he had a pretty decent game. 7 carries, 25 yards, and he added 5 catches for 27 yards with a 10.20 fantasy day. And this week, I know it's a tough matchup versus the Los Angeles Rams, but right now he looks like the guy over there in Houston, especially after this trade. Lindsay, he just hasn't done anything this season with Houston, and right now I think they're going to try to build up David Johnson's trade value before the deadline next week. So I think in this ball game, he's going to have a pretty decent workload. He's going to out-touch Lindsay, obviously, and he's a sleeper option, and he's still available as well in 65% of fantasy leagues. The next running back's Michael Carter of the New York Jets. So Michael Carter, he's been pretty decent over the last couple weeks here for this Jet team, even though this Jet team just can't win a ball game. 1-5 on the season here. So the last 2 games for Carter, Week 5 at the Atlanta Falcons, 10 carries, 38 yards, and a touchdown. And he added 3 catches for 20 yards. And then Week 7 in New England, a lot of garbage time in that ball game. 37 yards rushing, 8 catches, 67 yards, and a fumble loss, which was good for a decent day in PPR league. 16.40 fantasy points. And this week, it's going to be another tough matchup versus the Cincinnati Bengals here. But right here, he's the guy, in my opinion, over there for New York. Obviously, Tevin Coleman, he's not really been a factor in this offense and doing much. And also, they got P. Ryan and Ty Johnson as well, who's banged up. But right now, it's Michael Carter's backfield. The Jets are rebuilding as usual. They're 1-5 on the season. And it's time to play the young guys. And I think this week, Carter could have another pretty good game versus the Cincinnati team, especially in garbage time, where the Jets got to throw a whole lot and a lot of checkdowns. And the third and final running back I have as a sleeper this week is the Earnest Johnson of the Cleveland Browns. So the Earnest Johnson, in a spot start last week, had a huge ball game for Nick Chubb, obviously, and Kareem Hunter were both banged up. But it looks like Chubb's going to be back in this ball game versus the Pittsburgh Steelers here in Week 7. But the Earnest Johnson, let's see if he has the Chubb role in this ball game, where he's going to split carries or be a 60-40 type of thing, where Johnson gets the 40% and Chubb the 60%, because I don't think Chubb is definitely 100% right now. And Johnson, he actually got dropped in 3% of fantasy leagues, but owners who held on to him, I think, are smart, especially if they got him as a handcuff to Nick Chubb, who, let's be honest, he's a great running back, no doubt about it, but he's been banged up over the last 2 seasons as Chubb. And last week versus Denver, 22 carries, 146 yards for Johnson, a touchdown and 2 catches for 22 yards. So this week, if he even gets 10, 15 touches in this game, I think he's a good flex and number 2 option, especially with the buys and a lot of injuries as a sleeper guy. Running backs, I have his sleepers in Week 8 of the fantasy football season.